Hello, my name is Ed Clausen. I'm the president of the board of directors of the Ashland Food Co-op. I'd like to welcome you to our 2018 annual meeting. It's true that we are required to hold an annual meeting each year to report to you, our owners, on our stewardship of your investment in this wonderful organization. But we are also here, I would say, to celebrate who we are, what we've accomplished, and what we hope to become, being the premier provider of organic food in the Ashland area, and doing so in true spirit of cooperation, which means following sustainability principles, providing a wonderful place to work with good living wages, supporting the community in all ways that are appropriate in terms of our provision of food. So it's in some ways totally appropriate that we are holding this on a first Friday in June, where we are a part of Ashland's own celebration of its unique creativity. Let me tell you where we're headed with our presentation. First of all, welcome to not only those of you who are here in the room on this delightful afternoon, but those of you who might be viewing and listening to this presentation online, which we will have on our website for the remainder of the year. I'd like to introduce you to the members of the board and say a little bit about who the board is and how it functions. Emil Almiratico, our general manager, will be providing you with a financial overview of the results of 2018. We'll spend some time focusing on about three of our significant accomplishments in 2018. There have been many, but we decided to share with you three that we're particularly proud of. We will report to you on the strategic initiatives that we have been working on since our strategic planning process 5 years ago, and which we've actually refreshed just this spring. We have a few acknowledgments to make and an opportunity to respond to any questions that you might have at the end of our presentation. So we will ask you to hold those questions until that time. So here you see a picture of the happy board at work. That's me on the left. The next to me is Abby Lazaro, who's our board administrator. Abby's here this afternoon. Trina Ostergaard, our secretary, is here. Gwyneth Bowman, our vice president, and Steve Bowman, director. And are you related to Gwyneth, Steve? No, okay. Disclaimer. All right. Mira Wonderwheel came all the way from Klamath Falls to be here for our meeting. Julie O'Dwyer is not here. She's at the Consumer Cooperative Management Association meeting in Durham, North Carolina, and giving us a daily update on what she's learning at that delightful conference. Emil Almiratico, who I believe most of you know, is here, and Charlie Douglas, our treasurer, is not. So that is our current board, and the board is elected by you. We are all owners ourselves, and we bring I would say, a powerful volunteer spirit to this process because it's a very hard-working board. We have 7 standing committees, and that means that each director is probably chairing one of those committees and probably participating on 1 or 2 others. Our executive committee, finance committee, AFC Gives Committee is our new name for what had been our Grants Committee, where we distribute about $30,000 a year to wonderful nonprofits here in the greater Ashland area. Our Board Development Committee is the committee that pays attention to essentially developing the skills and capabilities of board members, but also ensuring that we're reaching out and drawing in owners as board candidates. Our External Relations Committee, a somewhat new committee, is responsible for connecting with other co-ops and promoting the co-op movement and cooperative education in the Rogue Valley. Owner Engagement Committee is our committee to build connections with you, our owners. And finally, our Strategic Planning Steering Committee is our way of paying attention to the long-term initiatives we've identified and making sure that we're working on them in a consistent way so they don't get lost in the push and urgency of day-to-day business. The board meets monthly on the second Wednesday of each month, except for July and December, and all owners are welcome to attend. That's typically 6 p.m. in this building, in our conference room. This is our Pioneer Street building. And I would simply note that although the typical board meeting is about an hour and a half long, we tend to be meeting for about 3 to 4 hours with a work session and an executive session as well. So it's a full evening for us. All of our committees, except a couple of them, have opportunities for owner representatives. So if you're interested at all in participating as a representative, for example, we have an owner representative on our Finance Committee and on our External Relations Committee, and I believe on our Owner Engagement Committee. So those are all opportunities where you can be involved and learn more about how the board works. We have here tonight some of the candidates for 4 seats that are vacant. 3 of those are the end of the term, and 1 results from a resignation. Dean Williamson, who is an incredible board member, moved to Colorado recently, so we need to fill his seat. So Melina Barker, who is here with us tonight. Hi, Melina. Is Lisa here? No, Lisa Beam is not. Steve Bowman is running for re-election. J.C. Curl. Yes, hi, J.C. Charlie is not here. Annie Hoy is with Julie at the CCMA meeting in Durham. And Dan at Mymar is here tonight. So I would like to thank all of those candidates. We consider that we have an extraordinary cast of candidates and would be just delighted if all of them were able to join us on the board. So the election is now on. If you haven't voted, we encourage you to do so. It closes on June 12th at 9 p.m. on June 12th. All right. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Emil for a financial overview.
Thank you very much, Ed. 2018 was, well, before I get to 2018 in detail, just a reminder that we've got over 10,000 owners participating in the co-op. Our sales last year declined by about 1.5%. We were on track earlier in the year to have positive sales, but with the summer smoke last season, we lost some ground and didn't quite make it up. A reminder that not only are we debt-free, but we are in a very strong financial position with almost $5 million in cash. And this year we'll be returning nearly $200,000 to our owners in patronage dividends. And this year, unlike past years, instead of sending out checks, we'll be receiving those dividends via credits at the cash register. If folks want cash, they're able to trade that credit for cash at the front desk. Just a quick reminder about how our business works. For every dollar that in sales that the co-op brings in, about 63% of it goes right out to pay for those products. So that's the big slice to the on the right side of the screen. And then working our way around counterclockwise, the next biggest expense is the expense of putting those products on the shelves, bringing them up, and accounting for them with personnel. So our labor costs about 26% in 2018. And then occupancy, including utilities and so forth. A reminder that we own all of our properties. We have no mortgage, no debt. So that occupancy is everything that it takes just to sustain the property as it is. Then we've got operating expenses, 2.3%, marketing and administrative expenses, a very small sliver of taxes, some upfront owner discounts, the $5 off 25s and the 10% shops like this month of June, all account for almost 2% of sales. And those are discounts up front. And ultimately, we end up with a net income of last year of 2.8%. And some of that 2.8% we'll talk about in a minute in how that's distributed in terms of dividends. We've got a question session at the end, if that'll work for you. If there's something that's unclear as we go, let me know. Go ahead. Yes, that was in the board discounts are in the administrative, the governance, and the employee discounts are in the payroll costs, personnel costs. Thank you. Last year, sales trended down, as I said, 1.5%. It looks like we were about to rebound from the Safeway reopening in 2018. However, with the smoke last summer, things reversed mid-year and we didn't quite make it up. So sales down slightly. So far this year, we're on track for an increase of about 3% year to date. So we're trending positive again, which is great to see. Here's another look at those sales trends. This one, the blue bars are the dollars. The green bar is the percent of growth or decline. That dotted line is 0. So last year our negative sales slowed down. So actually are rebounding. And again, this year we're positive above that 0 line. I want to talk about the patronage dividend, how that is determined every year. And I mentioned that we have a net income of 2.8%. And then we apply a formula to that. We determine what percent of our sales is to owners. And on the right or on the left there, it says member owner purchases of about 78%. And then non-owner purchases of 22%. So based on that 78%, the board makes a determination as to what percent of the member owner purchases, the net income related to net owner purchases, will be returned. IRS law requires 20% minimum be returned. We've typically returned 50%. Most of our peers, other co-ops that are in a patronage model, return the flat 20% and don't consider anything else. The other 80% go to operations. And in our case, we've been doing 50-50 for years. A couple of years we've done 40-60. And this past year, the board decided on a 30-70 return, 30% back to owners. It was a very good year. So the dollars end up being higher than the year before and retaining 70% for future development, expansion opportunities, and so forth. As with most businesses, it's imperative that some of those net income dollars retain in the business to advance the business in the future. So this year it was 70% retained, and then those 70% are reinvested for future use in the business. would like to talk about some of the 2018 milestones now. And Ed, do you want to cover the first couple there?
Thanks, Emil. The three that we chose to talk about are the creating a store manager position, developing a 5-year financial modeling capability, and the fundraiser that we did for the campfire victims in Paradise. Up until last year, we asked our general manager to not only manage 13 departments, including both the operating departments and the administrative departments, but also to attend to and lead all of our strategic initiatives as we look forward to the future. And it became clear that we were asking too much of any human being, even a super capable general manager like Emil, to do. So we stood back and said, what do we do with this? Well, we brought in a consultant from the National Cooperative Grocers Association who did a study and very quickly concluded that no other co-op of our size and volume runs an organization with only a general manager. The preferred model is a general manager and a store manager. And after interviewing all of our department managers and looking closely at our operation, he strongly recommended that we adopt that position. What that did was it allowed us to now split the operational leadership from the strategic leadership, the operational leadership going to the store manager, who gives much more attention now to operations such as merchandising, marketing opportunities, store-wide coordination, out of stocks, all the kinds of things that just need to be attended to make sure that the organization's running well. Here you see Barry Haynes, our store manager. We did a national search to try to find the best possible person and discovered that that person was actually in our produce department, one of our highest performing departments. And Barry took over that position in June and has just been doing amazing things since then. So we are totally convinced at this point that we made the right decision. And Emil has actually some time to pay attention to those long-range initiatives and opportunities that come up, as well as mentoring and supporting Barry in his role and coordinating the administrative staff. So we feel absolutely confident as a board that we made the right decision in terms of supporting that change of leadership. And we believe that it poises us to really launch into an expanded operation in the future in some ways that we're hoping to do. So looking to the future, we realized that if we're going to make some big changes, we need to be able to predict what they're likely to do to our ability to manage them from a financial point of view. So we asked the general manager to create a methodology for projecting the financial implications of major policy decisions 5 years into the future. Emil worked closely with our finance manager, Emil Geddes, and between them developed a robust projection tool that's complete with key financial ratios and checks for accuracy. We've given it a trial run and are actually really impressed with what we can now do, looking at best case, most likely case, and certainly worst case, so that we don't place the organization into jeopardy in terms of major investment decisions. So we feel confident now that we have some financial tools for looking to the future, as well as some big plans for what that might look like. So I'm going to ask Emil to talk about the last one.
Thank you, Ed. The board in December recognized a tremendous need in Northern California for assistance after the campfire. The fire burned for 13 days, evidently displaced nearly 20,000 homes, 19,000 homes in Paradise alone, and about 20,000 people moved to or found lodging in Chico, which is where one of our peer co-ops resides. And the board determined that we needed to do something locally to support those victims. So the board pledged $3,000 immediately and said if we can raise another $3,000 at the register or online, we would match another $3,000. So the board committed to $6,000, and all told, after the community and owner contributions, over $14,000 in cash was sent to Chico Natural Foods, who spent the money on the ground there for food in a program they called Aid for Campfire. So that all happened within a matter of weeks, and the aid has been tremendously appreciated by Chico, who was able to report directly back to us on the use of those funds, as well as that community. So it was a neat mobilization of a lot of effort on our end to make that happen. Next, I want to talk about the current status of our strategic planning initiatives. This is an example of some of the work we've done real time. This was from about 4 or 5 years ago when we began the strategic planning process with one of our breakout sessions. And these 3 initiatives continue on our radar, though we've addressed the first one I'll talk about. We purchased the property on Clear Creek that I'll share with you in a second. Next was we rented the former Deschott Bakery right around the corner on A Street, and we've been putting that to use. And then we've had quite a bit of activity. The External Relations Committee has really done a lot with the cooperative movement. I'll talk about that in a second. So first, talk about space. The Clear Creek property is really about 1.5 blocks away, but it's about 4 blocks by foot or by car. But to compare that property to where we are now, our current campus is about 1.4 acres. That includes the store, this building, a couple of other smaller buildings, and the barn that we use as a warehouse. If we're able to acquire the Umpqua property, which we continue to work toward, that'd be another almost acre for a combined 2.2 acres, which would be, we believe, plenty to sustain us into the future on this side of the tracks. If for some reason we were unable to acquire that Umpqua property in the next several years, we've got that Clear Creek property. Town is certainly growing in that direction. There is a lot of opportunity over in that direction. So if we can't acquire the Umpqua property, rather than be locked in here, we've got an out there. But that would be a mid to long term range opportunity, and not something that we're going to develop in the near future. Part B of the space is that if we can acquire the Umpqua property, we started work with a consortium of 3 separate architects working together with the management and the management team and the board to develop a vision of what we could do with those properties. So just to orient you, this green area is our retail store right now. The yellow here is deli, and this is part of the back of the house where we've got meat and produce fabrication. This is the bank drive-through here, and this indicates that we could put warehouse space there. These are a couple of trucks. We could handle quite a bit more delivery. And then this is the current Umpqua building. We think we could actually develop that building into a usable space. Here we are sitting right here in the Pioneer classroom. Here's the barn. Here's the former Deschott Bakery that we're utilizing currently. So this is a color-coded scheme of where the retail areas would be if we were able to to purchase the Umpqua property and how we could develop that. The crown jewel being all of this parking that would come with that Umpqua branch. Yes, not much. Truly, we've got this area here is on the ground floor in the back since we're on a hill, but we couldn't go up a second story here without significant disruption. We'd have to put in all kinds of foundations and so forth to get up. So we are looking at this as maybe an intermediate plan that would carry us for maybe the next 25 plus years. And then thinking about where we could go next, this would probably be it if, again, we can acquire the Umpqua property. Initiative B is a food production facility, and as I mentioned, we are leasing the Umpqua property, or not the Umpqua, I'm sorry, the former DeShot Bakery from that landlord. And here's what we're doing over there. We've moved the bakery out of the deli kitchen, which allowed space to refocus there. We've moved the bakery over because there was an existing bakery there. It lends itself well to pre-preparing pizzas, not baking them, but doing all the prep over in that food production facility. We also purchased, Loafers was a gluten-free bakery, I think in Talent, and they were going out of business. They had equipment, they had intellectual property in the form of gluten-free recipes that were very successful and very popular for us in the co-op. And we purchased all of that and moved the production into our food production facility on A Street, and we're now selling those products under our label in the co-op. And then we are currently working on a private label standard. We'd like to, whenever you see our label on a product, we'd like it to be clear what that means. Currently, we've got our label on a number of different products that aren't necessarily cohesive. Each one by different departments means something different. So we've got a team together right now to define what those standards are, and then using those standards, we'd really like to develop more both in-house as well as either co-branding or co-packing with other products. So that's in process. And then finally, this cooperative movement element has begun gaining traction. We've delegated responsibility for moving forward there with the External Relations Committee, chaired now by Director Steve Bowman, initially by Jeff Golden before he moved up to Salem. And we're collaborating with the Rogue Co-ops, which many of you recall are the Ashland Co-op, Medford Food Co-op, Rogue Credit Union, and the Grange Co-op. So we've got representation from all. There are a couple of other smaller co-ops that are joining in as well, and our goal is to grow that. The initiatives currently, one just kicked off. That's the Start a Co-op contest. We've offered a class here on starting a co-op. The Grange is offering, I'm sorry, not the Grange, the SBDC has offered a class, and Rogue Credit Union also offering a class on how to start a co-op. And then hopefully that'll seed some small startups. There's a $3,000 prize for the best startup plan. And then ultimately, we would hope that together we could maybe seed a small housing co-op, because we are all faced with staff housing issues. And so if we could model for the rest of the region a small cooperative housing project, that would be something. We don't have anything in our sights at this time, but if we were to develop, let's say, the Clear Creek property someday, perhaps the second or third floor on a big development like that could be dedicated to small units for workforce housing that would be cooperatively operated as opposed to just rented. So that's a recap of our strategic initiatives. And at this time, I'd like to ask Ed to take us on the next lap.
Thanks, Emil. So this is actually kind of a special moment, and it's the kind of thing we rarely do. We don't try to have a big profile as a board, but there's one board member that we really want to recognize. Did that make you a little dizzy, Gwyneth? I hope not. This is our wonderful, beautiful, slightly purple, longest serving board member. Gwyneth has been on the board since 2004. She's really the memory and the spirit of the board. She was the board president for over 10 years. I don't remember the actual number, Gwyneth. Can you? 10 years, okay, great. She brought with her and has exhibited just a wealth of leadership experience. Her background in health administration and hospital administration, and her work in actually doing leadership development in a number of contexts has been shared with us on the board and been extremely helpful. She's been our touchstone for consensus, which is the way we run our board. We don't make a decision until we have agreement. And Gwyneth has been very clear in supporting our process and making that really work for us. She's brought a real sense of clarity to our processes, our procedures, the way we get things done, so that we don't fumble around at all. We know how to do our work and how to move forward. And as we bring new board members on, we orient them to that, and they're very quickly up and moving. And I would say more than anything, she represents the integrity of the board, insisting that we do everything based on our principles, our cooperative principles, so that ultimately when we make decisions of governance, that we can speak with one voice in terms of representing those to the organization, to the owners, and to the community. And finally, Gwyneth, I would say, is her graciousness in always readily appreciating all of the contributions of everybody in the organization has just has been a marvel to watch as she shares that readily in every opportunity. So, Gwyneth, we will miss you. Gwyneth said this is her last term. She will not run again. The only reason I'm up here is because she said, and I won't be president when I go out, because it would not be good for the succession of the organization to do that. So Gwyneth has been my incredible backup as vice president for the last couple of years, and now will be stepping down after our board meeting in June, though she has agreed to extend her time just a little bit to help us mentor what we know will be a number of new board members. So we have a small token of appreciation for Gwyneth.
I will raise hell at the board meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gwyneth. So now it's time for questions.
And we want to make sure that we record the questions, so we have a microphone on a cord that reaches to about here. So if you've got a question, please come up and use the microphone. Don't be shy. Come on up. Donnie.
Well, first of all, just as a member, thank you to all of the board members, everyone running for election, the staff, and all of the people who participate in this incredible company, organization. It's just ongoing inspiration, and particular thanks to the leadership. I have two questions. The first is, have you been able to measure any impact around the bike benefits program in terms of reducing car traffic? And the second question is, will you be looking to export the loafers gluten-free bread and as a potential avenue for increasing offsite revenue?
Thank you, Donnie. First question is, no, we can't tie the impact in the parking area directly to the bike benefit. There's just doesn't seem to be a way to do that. But what we can do is tell you that the bike benefit, the dollars that are going towards the bike benefit program, which is a 5% discount for folks that sign up for the bike benefit program, bring their helmet through the line with a UPC sticker on it, those dollars that are going to that discount are going up. So it's being adopted more, but in terms of how many cars we're taking out of the parking lot, pretty difficult to measure.
Follow-up suggestion. As a bike benefits user, I haven't been surveyed, and you could just ask us, how often are you substituting your vehicle with the bike? And just to sort of, I mean, I'm always interested to see, is the impact of the desired.
Super.
Yeah.
Very good. Sounds like a good way to do it. Gwyneth?
I just want to very briefly say that they have ordered signs to advertise it that will become going up.
Thank you, Gwyneth.
Are they already up?
Gwyneth mentions that we're putting signs up to drive some more folks towards the bike benefits so that everybody's aware of it. Thank you. Donnie, your other question was about the loafer's bread. Our vision is that someday we'll have excess capacity. Right now, we're barely keeping up with demand. So as we develop our program, we certainly hope maybe with additional oven space in the future that we can do that, because it's been very, very successful. Thank you. Other questions, please. We should have placed a couple of shills in the audience with questions to, well, here's Charlie. Charlie, do you have a question for the? Welcome, Charlie Douglas, our treasurer and candidate for another term on the board. Donnie has another question. Good for you. Came prepared.
So I haven't had a read of the bylaws recently. This is probably directed at board members. I'm interested in two aspects. The first is in regards to the patronage dividend. Is there any thing written in terms of what the rural electricity co-ops are now facing with members who've been members for 30, 40 years and are saying, hey, for that equity investment you kept, I want a payout. I'm assuming that in this case, it's the prerogative of this co-op to retain those and not retain them with any intention to ever return them. It's just essentially a capital fund, but that was my first question. And the second question is whether or not the bylaws have had any update to them to have consideration for if the co-op went under for any reason, where those assets based on essentially patronage contributions would be transferred, I assume, to another co-op, like lots of other cooperatives have that provision. I hadn't seen that in the current bylaws, so I'm wondering if that's something that's been looked at or updated without me seeing.
Great. So the first question is there any obligation in the bylaws or elsewhere for the co-op to return retained patronage in the future? And there is none with the Ashland Food Co-op. Those funds can be maintained in perpetuity until and unless there's a liquidation event, in which case the owners, after all liabilities are paid, the owners then would get their pro rata portion of the retained earnings. So we have meticulous records about purchases, about what proportion of retained earnings are attributed to individual owner purchases. So that would be in a liquidation, those dollars would go back to owners, not to, in this case, to another co-op.
I guess you'd still have a percentage that would come from the earnings post-tax from non-members.
That's
so
correct.
There might still be something that needs to be transferred.
That's if after liquidating all debt. So at any given time, we carry about $1 million, not in debt, but in accounts payable and so forth, other liabilities, short-term liabilities. So we'd have to cover those first. and then the patronage return. If there was anything else, then I guess the board would have an obligation.
There could be a lot given the properties are probably worth a fair amount.
Well put. Yeah, good point. Those are on the books at historic value, not at current. Yeah, that'd be a great problem, but also be a pretty blue day if we were in a liquidation event. So it seems like we're a ways away from that. Who else has a question for the video record that will be posted on our website? Probably within 24 hours, right, Phil? All right, hearing none. Ed? Okay, for those of you that came to our annual meeting this year, we committed to providing a voucher for the First Friday free community, or First Friday, not free, it'll be free to us, a voucher for the community dinner at First Friday this evening. We've got the marketing team is putting that together. Actually started at 4 o'clock, didn't it? So it's in process. So see Tracy for a meal ticket and enjoy the evening. If you haven't already done so, please sign your name, the owner record that you were here at the meeting. All right, thank you all for coming, and we're adjourned.